started learning about positive discipline, when I first got this book, I had been a teacher for um like 12 years or so. Um and at that point, I understood positive discipline a little bit, but I stuck with it because it really spoke to who I had become as a teacher and who I wanted to be as a parent. And so over the years, as I went through the process of getting certified myself to facilitate parenting classes, that was my first step. And then gradually completing the steps to becoming a trainer,
Mm,
my understanding and my husband's understanding through me has grown exponentially. And so the deeper my learning becomes, the more I say, oh,
mhm,
this is so important. And it has such, like you said, depth of meaning, not just in my parenting, but with the internal work I'm doing on myself, with my relationships with my husband, with my own parents, with my coworkers and friends, just with my human relationships.
mhm,
That what I really appreciate about this work is that it's not just about parenting skills or teaching skills, because we have programs for teachers too. It's about humaning skills. How
mhm.
do we walk in the world together with other imperfect human beings and navigate together and come back together when we make mistakes and make amends and fix what needs to be fixed and then keep moving forward together? There's so much of that this work just gets deeper and richer the more and more experience I have with it. So I'm
Gotcha.
curious about, because most your work has primarily been as an advocate for families in different realms of work experience out there in the community. How has positive discipline impacted your work in addition to your parenting?
I have had the privilege to facilitate, some workshops and some trainings. And like you mentioned, it isn't only for parenting because I have taken what I have learned. And when I learned in that workshop, parent positive discipline workshop, um, even now to my trainings out with adults, these adults, right? So I stop and think about, we were all children once. I don't know what each of us carries. I don't know everybody's story. But as a facilitator, as someone who cares, you, when you have people in a room, you always have to know, how to be compassionate in the room of people. I know that positive discipline also does a good work. It's well rounded in being trauma informed because you don't know who's in the room, who's your
Right.
audience, and that's important. It's important. More it when we talk about, how it's impacted in the work that I was doing around, advocating for mental health and wellness. Um, you and I have sat here and talked about connection, relationships. That is very important for mental wellness,
Mm.
for healthy families, for strengthening families, and having these strong relationships, with our children. So I think when we reflect on how impactful this positive different discipline can be, it's in different levels and areas of your own life, and it could have a ripple effect on who you sit with and who you have conversations with,
Mm.
because when you're sitting with people, they share their stories. Sometimes they share their stories and they may be struggling with something, and it could be parenting, and they're just trying to navigate just like you and I. How do I get through this challenging time in my life right now? What if it's something with their children? Um, and positive discipline comes up. One thing that came up right now is the word discipline.
Mm.
Within that word discipline is disciple, and that
Yes.
is to teach,
Yes.
right? And I think, I strongly believe for me that there's a calling to share that knowledge, to teach. And that's who we are as parents, to teach. So I love how it's included and embedded in everything, that positive discipline has to offer. So be a disciple.
And you said so much there that rings for me. You said yes, that we don't know other people's stories, and yet when we when we do a positive discipline training, and we talk about, so like I said, in our role plays, and we mentioned a few minutes ago, in our role plays and discussion, we really examine, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What feelings are evoked by the thoughts that I'm having? And based on my thoughts and feelings, what decisions am I making about myself, about my child, about the situation? Um, we go through that thinking, feeling, deciding process very unconsciously most of the time. But when people tell you their stories, you can start to hear their thinking, their feeling, their deciding process, and how just one little shift in that experience, if I shift my thinking a little bit, it evokes a different feeling, a different perception, a different
Mm-hmm.
set of possibilities about how I can choose to act. And
Mm-hmm.
so, helping our children be aware of, and that means I've got to get curious. So if you're my child and you've done something, maybe you were disrespectful, or you did something that was against the rules, or push the boundaries, if I can stop and get curious. And so I wonder, what was that about? I wonder what you were thinking. And I can't be snarky about it. I have to be really genuinely, like, we got to be careful with our tone of voice. What were you thinking? No, it needs to be. So I'm really curious about what you were thinking. What was your goal? What were you trying to achieve? Can you tell me more about this? If we can draw forth from our children some of their own thinking and feeling and decision-making process, and bring forward to their awareness, it helps our awareness about, hmm, I assumed this was what was going on for you. But based
Mm-hmm.
on my curiosity questions that you've just answered, I'm thinking, oh, my assumption was not at all accurate. This was what was going on for you. So based on that, well, what could you do differently next time to get a better result? Or how could we approach this problem together so that we're working together to solve it? And you don't feel like you have to do something under the table, or against the rules to get your need met. And so being able to have those conversations with our kids can be really, really important. And again, creating that connection before we try to correct, because if I try to correct what I think is the problem, and I'm totally wrong because I didn't ask my
Mm-hmm.
child, what was going on for you? Then I've addressed the something that doesn't exist. Basically, I really need to know what's going on for them. And so again, this training gives us tools and skills, and these tool cards that we've held up. And again, mine are in English. Maricela got some in
Yeah,
Spanish,
Spanish.
so that she can use them in the Spanish speaking community. But these tools, there's 52 tool cards in this deck, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of them is, and hopefully I can say that. So focus on solutions. Well, I can't focus on a solution if I don't know exactly what the problem is. So first we have to talk about and understand what's the problem. And then if I have made a mistake and I need to recover from that, there's a tool called the 3 R's of
Yes.
recovery. How can I recognize it and reconcile and resolve it with the other person? Are there tools that are standing out for you there?
Yeah, I saw this one that it says um oh, it says, not sure if you valide sentimientos, validate feelings. Look again, taking the moment to validate the feeling of that child, of that person in front of you. Allowing the children to express themselves and how they're feeling. And oftentimes, again, we sometimes say you shouldn't be feeling that way,
Oh, yeah.
or that's not a reason to feel that way. Well, we're not validating those feelings. That's their experience, not yours, with what's happening. So validating their feelings, is again that connection before that correction that you mentioned. Let's
Yeah.
connect. Let me hear you out, and then let's have a better conversation.
Right.
So
And
and
so, yeah, I think if when I'm mad and somebody tells me, well, you shouldn't be mad about that, then I'm even madder. How many times do I tell it? How many times do we tell our children with good intent? Because I don't perceive that as something that should make you mad. So why are you mad?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if I put you down for having those feelings, so validating doesn't mean I have to agree with your feeling or understand your feeling. I just need to recognize, oh, so you're mad because of this. Is that right?
Mhm. Mm.
Okay, I get mad
Okay.
sometimes too.
Yeah.
So I've just validated the feeling, even if I don't have to agree with it or understand it. I make it okay for you to have feeling. And like you just said, all of a sudden we've connected around that.
Yep.
Now we can talk about the correction piece of it.
Yeah.
So we're raised to think that we have two tools in our parenting toolbox. We have rewards and punishments. I can reward you into doing what I want you to do, or I can try to punish you into doing what I want you to do. And if those aren't working, I don't know what else to do.
Mm.
The two
Yeah.
tools that I've been told are all the tools I have. And so what I love about these tool cards is there's 52 of them, one for every week of the year that we can practice. And as our children get old enough, we can be really transparent and say, all right, well, this week I think let's all try to practice the 3 R's of recovery.
Mhm.
When we make a
Mhm.
mistake, let's just be really conscious of how we're handling mistakes and practice these 3 R's. And I'll practice them, and you guys can too. So that these are tools we can use together. It doesn't just have to be some secret thing I've got under the table here to use on my kids. They're tools to teach my child, because you've said we are our children's first teacher. If
Mhm.
we can teach our children that they have 52 tools in their toolbox for managing mistakes and problems and bumps along their life road, man, we're going to have some really successful kids out there. So I think I just love these tool cards. I have them out all the time. Um,
I think the other part, Ava, is that it isn't just you. You have some
right.
correction, right? Something to correct. When we're doing it together, that's where the modeling comes in, and that's where like, hey, we all have room for growth as as a parent. And I appreciated that you mentioned that for that week, the 3 R's for recovery, you could be like, let's all practice this.
Yeah.
So that's huge because when we talk about modeling or when we talk about that big teaching part, well, I need to put into practice, practice what you preach, as we say,
Walk
what
the
we're talking.
talk, as they say.
Yeah,